Welcome to Harvest Podcast, where we dive deeper into Sunday sermon, hear from guests, or stories from the house.
Hello, Harvest Church. I'm here today with Pastor Jeena Lee, our next gen pastor. So she is pastor of ages 18 and under, or birth to 18. She also happens to be my sister. So this is a fun privilege for us to get a time to sit down together and chat about ministry, and especially next gen ministry for sure. And, you know, our objective here is to help you, to help enable you parents to do all you can to raise your children in the current generation that they are living in. You know, I say this to my own children who are raising children. Your children are born for such a time as this. You were born for such a time as this. You know, God knows the time and hour that He brings children into the world. He gives them families and parents to raise them. So we want to engage our families to do the best that they can do. And as you can see, we have two books that we're highlighting here. These are not necessarily Christian books, but they are excellent resource books for you parents. I haven't read The Anxious Generation. I mean, I've heard him talk about it a lot, Jonathan Haidt. Haven't read it yet, but this other one, The Collapse of Parenting by Dr. Leonard Sachs, I have read this one. So we want to talk about both of them.
And I have read The Anxious Generation and highly recommend it. Both of them. I've read both of them and very helpful to anyone, even grandmothers, grandfathers, aunts, uncles. If you are in the lives of anybody, even 25 and younger, these are extremely helpful. The Anxious Generation, especially for that, even the young adult age, because of what they're dealing with anxiety.
Mm-hmm. And Jonathan Haidt is a professor. I believe he's at NYU in New York, maybe. Can't remember. So he does a lot of research, and he cares about how social media is affecting this next generation. And so that's really kind of where we're going to get to today. So what are some insights that you've had? Because you've been here at Harvest for how many years?
28 years. It was 28 in October.
So in 28 years, you have seen numerous generations grow up and either stay rooted and established or leave.
Yes.
Talk about that a little bit.
28 years. The kids who were the oldest in ministry, children's ministries when I came are now in their 30s. Some have moved away and have brought their kids back, and that's been really interesting for me. It makes me feel very old. But also, so some of the things we've seen, I think, are behavioral issues have really exploded in the last, I would say, 10 years, 8 to 10 years. And not just, I'm not talking about special needs like autism or things like that, which that has also exploded, but dealing with serious anger issues, fits of rage, aggression towards each other, sexually aware of things that they should not be sexually aware of, just very, things that are very concerning as pastors for me and Pastor Beverly, our preschool director, Angela. Like, we see these issues, and then we hear some of the things that kids are watching on TV, the movies that are third and fourth graders, R-rated movies that our little kids are allowed to see, video games they're playing that are marked mature, for mature audiences only, have high profanity, high violence.
And why do parents, to me, that's foreign. Like, I would always protect my children, and my children would protect their children from that. So I don't understand letting your children watch a child watch an R-rated movie or movies marked for mature. That's like beyond, I don't get it.
I think sometimes it comes from parents who are in divorce situations, and one or other of the parents doesn't have the same standards regarding those things, or they do it. I almost think sometimes they do it to spite the other parent who may be a Christian. I'm thinking specifically of two kids that I know of two different families, And that is specifically the situation. But that's not true for all. I sometimes feel the parents, either because they don't realize or they're unwilling to put in the research about the movies they're going to see or the video games they're letting their kids watch. It's very easy to find that information online. But there's a sense where I have felt like, oh, I mean, I just wish parents would realize what is in these things. And it did come up in our 4th grade Oasis Kids class. One of our kids had seen a movie at a cousin's house that he wasn't supposed to see. He knew he wasn't supposed to see it, and he had kept it a secret, but it came out in the 4th grade class. And then he saw his mom talking to our 4th grade teacher, so then he immediately went and confessed. So there are some of those. There's sneaky things that happen too. And it's just a combination of things. But I just want to urge parents, be vigilant because there's danger everywhere.
Be vigilant, protect your children. You know, you want to keep your children innocent.
Yes.
You know, there is age-appropriate things that they should learn as they grow up, and not everything all at once when they're little, you know, and it just, we as parents are charged with raising our children in the fear and admonition of the Lord. The scripture is clear about that. And so if you're not doing it, nobody else is going to do it. You know, you're the first line. Parents, you're definitely the first line. Since you mentioned movies, let's mention right now, Plugged In.
Yes.
What is the website exactly?
It's just pluggedin.com.
Pluggedin.com. It's a resource, a Focus on the Family. Focus on the Family is a ministry that we recommend.
Absolutely. I
mean, when my kids were little, I listened regularly. It's different leadership now, but it's still good leadership.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
I listen to it regularly. They have podcasts. I got all their books to help me, especially when I became a single parent. Man, I was reading everything I could about being a single mom to a boy and a girl. And they are a great resource for families for sure. And then this came out sometime when my kids were little, pluggedin.com. They review music,
movies, TV shows. I think they even do video games. Like before I go see any movie, I look it up online just to see, because it tells you exactly what profanity is in it, how much violence, if there's anything sexual or.
And just a little insight about Jeena and me. And, you know, we're sisters, but we're different. You know, Jeena has really almost a perfect memory. I mean, she remembers details about things from little kids, but she can watch a movie and it lives in her brain all forever, very vividly. She'll dream about it. And I am not that way at all. I watch a movie and I can't tell you what it was about for very long, you know. I'm on to the next thing. I just don't remember the details. It doesn't affect me like that. So some of you probably have children the same way. Yeah. Some that are very affected by it, and some that it can bounce right off of them, but every child is different for sure.
Yeah, and I think that's one insight that parents need to be aware of, the differences in personality of their kids. Mm-hmm. Because for me, watching a scary movie or a movie with profanity or anything sexual, I remember it. I can remember it in vivid detail, so I don't. Mm-hmm. You
guard your heart.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because you need to.
I still remember from our childhood, I was probably 11 or 12, and black and white movie of Charles Lindbergh's baby being kidnapped. I have very vivid memories of the ladder against the wall of the black and white house and the baby, and fear.
That's so terrible.
Being so afraid. So I think I'm extra cautious when it comes to kids, because I have to remember not all of them are like me. However, some are, and it can affect them greatly.
For sure. So I think we'll start here with the book by Dr. Leonard Sachs, The Collapse of Parenting. This is actually a revised and updated book. He's written this earlier, but he's just now revised and updated the book. So The Collapse of Parenting, How We Hurt Our Kids When We Treat Them Like Grown-Ups. And to fully understand that subtitle, you need to get the book and read it. But some of the reviews in here are like, you know, if you're only going to read one parenting book this year, make it The Collapse of Parenting by Leonard Sachs. One of the premier experts on parenting, Dr. Leonard Sachs, brilliantly articulates the problems parents experience with their children and gives them solutions. And just on and on. There's pages of recommendations here. But I think kind of how we'll go through this book is through the titles, and maybe not all of them because, this podcast isn't 2 hours long and we want to get to both books. But the very first chapter he talks about here is the culture of disrespect.
That is extreme. And the shift has happened in the last 10 to 12 years that I can think of. It used to be that I could say to a child who's being disrespectful or disobedient in 1st to 5th grade in Quest, if you do not begin to obey, I'm going to call your parents and send you with them. And immediate kids would line up. I'm sorry. Yes, I'll obey. Now I can say that, and they basically will go, don't care. The drop, and it's not, when I say, I'm not making a blanket statement that this is everyone, because that's not true, but a high percentage of the children that we minister to.
It's something you notice
Yes.
through 28 years of working with children.
Absolutely. Parents have let down their authority. It's almost as though they are afraid to be in charge or to say no to their kids. And so I've had to start saying, I don't care what you do out there with your mom and dad. I care what you do in here with me. And in here, these are the rules. You either follow them or you're out.
And why are parents afraid to be the authority in their children's lives? Is that a cultural thing? Like what?
I think there's a couple of things.
Where does
I think
that
it's
come
a
from?
cultural thing, but I also think for maybe millennials who are children of Gen Xers, or the Gen Xers, parents of boomers, maybe that response to a very authoritative parent or the rules, well, I'm not going to raise my kids that way.
Yeah.
They do the opposite, and they just, kids do not believe that their parents mean what they say.
Yeah. He brings up in here the difference between authoritative, authoritarian, and permissive. And so which of those three do you think raises the most successful children? Authoritative, authoritarian, or permissive?
Not permissive.
And not authoritarian.
No, not authoritarian. It has to be that authoritative, that balance between
Love.
relationship, love, and authority. So I tell our teaching team, we're the framework. They have to have the framework of the rules and the boundaries. Kids need strong boundaries, and they need to know that you as parents mean what you say. So that is consistency in your rule making and rule following. Don't set rules that are impossible. But also mean what you say. Like little kids, they learn so fast, and they learn when mom and dad are on different pages. They can be extremely obedient with us in class, and I watch them walk out the door, and they are immediately disrespectful to their mother or to their dad, and one of the parents are saying, listen, I told you, listen, 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 and the kid, and they wouldn't do that with me.
Yeah.
And so, I want to encourage you to say what you mean, follow through, and be consistent. It will make your life so much easier in the long run.
I want to emphasize this. It's authoritativeness, not authoritarian. You're not ruling with an iron fist and no love. You're putting loving boundaries, which God does with us. So loving boundaries, and then if they step outside those boundaries, well, they get the consequences of that, which is what God does with us. It's authoritative. It has that love with it, and permissiveness is not the thing either, because again, you don't have to take my word for it. Read these books by doctors and scientists, and they will tell you these are the three things, and it's the authoritative family that raises the most well-adjusted, sets up the children for the best success in life, is that authoritative parent and parental guidance in the home, for sure.
And I want to just tag on that. It's not yelling either.
Yeah.
I mean, we all get angry. We all feel angry. But kids don't generally respond to anger. They'll respond once or twice, but then they're just responding out of fear, not because that also falls in the authoritarian, that anger, dealing with anger. It's much better if you can just remain calm and cool, like you've set the boundaries before the incident happens. And it's like, oh, these are the consequences of what you did. This is it. And if you start feeling angry, take a time out and come back. We're much scarier when we're quieter and calm.
That's so true. And you know, it's so true that we and you too, other adults, you know, you can tell children who've been parented well. You know, they're respectful of other adults. There's this respect and honor.
And you don't mind being around them.
You enjoy being around them, even when they're little. You know, they might be little kids, but they already have that respect. They understand that, and they're just a joy to be around. So for sure, parents, learn to be that authoritative person in your child's life, just to set them up for the best success ever that they can have. The next, he talks about food in here, and I think really in this chapter, it's, you know, letting kids decide what they're going to eat instead of you deciding what they're going to eat.
And that is a real problem. Like,
really?
We have kids at camp who won't eat anything. We took a boy this past summer who the only thing his adult sent with him Pediasure, little protein drinks, because she said he won't eat anything that I don't cook. And he did not eat anything at camp. I didn't let him go to the snack bar, and one counselor did make him eat an apple, and one finally made him eat a granola bar, but that is a child ruling the home instead of the parent ruling the home.
That sure is. And that's not the way of the kingdom for sure when your child rules the home.
No, and
that also blows my mind, for one thing. I never asked my children what they wanted to eat. We had dinner, and that's what they were offered to eat. I know that's the way my kids do it as well. I mean, that doesn't mean they eat everything on their plate, but
yeah, I think
they don't get to make the rules.
And I think that also, I think we're going to talk about that later, but Leonard Sachs talks about the value of family dinner time. Mm-hmm. And I think it is sad in our culture today. It's very fragmented because of sports or after-school activities. And the family dinner time provides all of the things we're talking about, the relationship, the love, teaching manners, how to have conversations, and mom or dad making the meal, and this is what we eat. Mm-hmm. Picky eaters go to bed hungry. Like, this is what we eat. And that also sets the rule of the authoritative parent. Mm-hmm. These are the family rules, and this is how we live as a family.
Yes, and it might seem idealized there, that picture of a family meal, and maybe you can't do it every single night, but if you can make it a habit in your home as many nights as possible, where it's this, because then everybody is seen, everybody's heard, and it creates this environment of love and connection that is so missed in this culture today. Yeah. No phones are allowed at the table.
No cell phones, no tablets, no TV on, just family time.
Yeah, no, that's so good. His next chapter here is on medication, and he goes into how medicated our children are, but also mismedicated often.
So one of the eye-opening things in both of these books for me was realizing that sleep deprivation mimics ADHD.
Right. He brings this out in this chapter.
In boys especially. So many times gaming consoles are in a child's bedroom. Mm-hmm. Please don't do that. Take everything out, cell phones, tablets, game consoles, take them out of the bedroom, because boys tend to, and it's not just boys, but it affects boys the most. Mm-hmm. They're staying up till all hours of the night, gaming, sleep deprived, begin to mimic the signs of ADHD. So then they get medicine for ADHD, but really they're sleep deprived.
Yeah.
And that's mismedication, overuse of medication, and somebody not paying attention to what they're doing in their bedrooms.
He does talk about that in here, and he talks about, how a parent had come into his office and she thought she had diagnosed him herself with ADHD. And so he started talking to the boy, and found out that the little boy was staying up late. And yeah, I don't know if he was playing a game or watching something on TV because he had a TV in his room. And so he challenged the mom to none of that. And sure enough, the boy started sleeping, the 10 hours of night that he needed. And he became the normal little boy that he was supposed to be and did not have ADHD and did not need medication. Yeah. So sometimes too, parenting is work. It is work, but it's a work that is so rewarding. Our children are a gift from God. And they need to be cherished. We need to put the time in to parent our children, to be with them. And I was a single mom, so I know how hard life can be sometimes. But still, really, if you can hear anything I say, to make your children a priority, to spend time with them, to pay attention with them, to read with them, to eat dinner with them, all of these things, because that's what your child needs, instead of letting the TV always babysit them or the gaming console.
Or the tablet.
And now it's social media, of course, which we're going to get into all of that here in a minute. But yeah, put the time in, the work in, but it's rewarding work for your children for sure.
And I think with the medication also, the food ties in with that, because if your kids aren't getting protein, they are lethargic, tired, their attention span is shorter. We have several kids in children's ministry who what they have for breakfast on Sunday morning is Takis and a sweet drink from the Rio Grande. That sets them up for failure with us. And it's
actually setting them up for failure their whole life because the bad eating habits that start right there. Yeah. Talking about that, sometimes it's us that have the bad habits too. We don't eat right. We don't eat well. We don't sleep well. And so we think, well, how can I make my child if I don't? So I've said this before in other contexts, do the work in your own life, parent, that you need to do so that you can help your child be the person that they need to be. Sometimes I think dads don't want to confront pornography because, well, maybe they're dealing with pornography. Honestly, we just need to get sin out in the open. And then it's so much easier to call it what it is and deal with it and be done with it instead of hiding in shame always. Absolutely. And it goes that way with food habits and everything. Do what you need to do so you can, be that example for your children. That they'll eat right. Yeah, and this is just a little side note, but an egg is a multivitamin for a child. And you can ask any doctor that. If they're worth their snuff, they're going to agree and tell you that. Yeah. But an egg is a multivitamin for a child. It's amazing. They get and for us too. It's got so much vitamin B and all the things in it we need for energy,
So good to know.
Yeah.
These aren't things they're teaching us anymore.
Mm-mm. They're not teaching us these things anymore. Next chapter, screens.
So in one of these books, I think it's The Anxious Generation, it has this paragraph: healthy brain development depends on getting the right experiences at the right age and in the right order. The frontal cortex of the brain, which is responsible for understanding consequences of actions, risk assessment, impulse control, isn't fully formed until humans are in their 20s. So guys, it's almost 24, 25. Mm-hmm. So the screens bypass all of the right experiences at the right age. They bypass that. So both of these doctors are in they're aligned with their thoughts. Basically, no screens almost at all for 0 to 2 years. No TV, no tablets. Even the programming, Miss Rachel, like there's a YouTube, Miss Rachel, it's inappropriate for under 2 because it overstimulates the brain. Mm-hmm. And so then it is, so I made this for the Lean In conference. So 0 to 5, smartphones, tablets, computers, and TV are not suitable for very young children. Mm-mm. 0 to 2, none at all. 3 to 5, very sparingly. And that,
I honestly, from my grandchildren experience, if you introduce a phone or a tablet too soon, they are like little monsters when they want it.
And they get it.
They're a monster. It's like get the screen. I mean, now you could put them in front of the TV. The TV doesn't quite do what the little phone does. It's like they become monsters, and I don't like it.
And I would agree with that because
Yeah.
I've seen that. We've had as young as 4-year-olds come in with cell phones, and it's
Blow
not
my
good.
mind.
Yeah. So one of these doctors, I think it's Jonathan Haidt, but he says the child's brain is expecting to wire up in a 3-dimensional, 5 senses world of people and things.
Outside at a playground.
Yeah, and he says the only exception to that is FaceTime and Zoom, like you do with your grandkids. He said that when it's a loved
Human.
one, human, that is almost as good as face-to-face. But other than that, they need the real-world experiences of talking to mom and dad to learn facial cues and not walking like this or walking like this.
Yeah.
So I just thought that was so good.
And Dr. Sachs, he says no social media.
Absolutely.
So no social media. He says no social media for any child under 18. That's the newest science that's out there right now. Is no social media for any child under 18. And I'm just going to bring Pastor Ryan in here for a moment because in December on a Wednesday night, we were having a question and answer session. And he brought up how that has been a rule they followed in their own house. They have their youngest is graduating from high school this year, and she just now got a phone. And I don't know if she has social media yet. And he asked her right there, he said, do you feel cheated or left out? And she said, no. And, she's a beautiful, well-rounded and adjusted girl. And they have 2 older children. They follow the same rules. Another thing he said is they've only ever had one TV in their house, and it was in the living room. So no gaming consoles or TV in the children's room. And that is the rule of thumb right there. If you want to raise a family that you're doing setting up the best foundation you can for your child. Another thing to note here, if you like Google, tech gurus, children have social media, you will find that most of them who were involved in like founding Facebook or Apple or any of those, they do not allow their children to have social media. They have they have very little time with an iPad or anything like that. Like these tech guys who developed this very software,
They know how bad it is.
They know how bad it is. They know how addictive they've created it, and they don't let their own children use it.
I think that should just put the flags up for everybody. Yeah. These guys recommend no smartphones for anyone under 16 years of age. And I would just agree with that.
I would too, because pornography.
Yeah.
Like, let's just say because pornography.
And I have specifically talked to 2 or 3 9-year-olds already who had been addicted to pornography. One through a tablet, unsupervised access in a bedroom, and it's just a little girl. Somebody at school called her and a friend a lesbian. They didn't know what that word meant. They Googled it, and up came Pornhub. 9-year-old girl exposed to Pornhub. 9-year-old boy exposed to pornography through YouTube. There really is no safe device. There's lots of things you can do to make your internet safe and their devices safe. But in my opinion, they should not have a device that connects to the internet until they are 16 or 18 years old. They can't handle it.
No, they and then they're, like you said, their prefrontal cortex is wide open still. It's wide open because they're learning, they're growing, they're learning. And so whatever they start looking at gets soaked into their brain, and it becomes harder and harder to get it out.
You can't undo hardcore porn use at a 9-year-old brain. I can't.
That over and over is the story for little boys.
Yes.
And it's becoming more prominent for little girls, but that over and over is the story for little boy. And you have to also, it happens with other kids at school, on the playground, or at their home. So you also have to, be checking with your child about that, and just, you're never going to protect them from everything. But man, you have to be on your guard and talking to them and be open so they can feel like they can come to you and say, something happened and I need to tell you, and they feel like they can talk to you.
Yeah, because a friend exposing them to something pornographic is also a repeating story I've heard. And I had one family, and I thought this was a great piece of advice. Tell me, they had told their fifth grade son, "You're not allowed to look at anyone else's advice, or not advice, device, tablet, phone, computer, unless we are in the room. Not at school, not at somebody else's house." And it just so happened this saved that little guy from being expelled from school, because a whole group of boys after school was they were looking at someone's phone, pornographic images, and he didn't because of his parents' rule, and the rest of the boys were expelled from school.
Smart parents right there.
So there are things we can do. We can't protect from all, but we can certainly protect from some.
Yes. And Jonathan Haidt believes that the devices should not be in the classrooms either. Like he's really trying to start a movement across schools where the devices are not allowed in the classroom.
And I just so wholeheartedly agree, because so now I'm in the middle school service. I'm in elementary. When they have a phone put in their pocket, they have no impulse control. They are taking it out, looking, checking secretly. They cannot control themselves. They're kids to begin with, so their impulse control is bad. But then you give them a device that connects to the internet, or they're expecting a text or anything. A smartwatch is the same. And their attention is just constantly broken. So you're doing really bad things. And it also creates a great deal of anxiety.
You know, think about yourself. I'm going to think about myself, you know. We all grab our phone and we start going to the news and we scan or whatever it is for our, our X or our Instagram. And I mean, Jeena and I are, we'll admit right here,
Yes, we will.
our downtime after work, like at night, I know she's probably sitting on her couch with her cats and I'm sitting on my couch with my cat. That's terrible. That sounds awful. We two
Not
old ladies
every
with
night.
our cats.
Not every night.
I have dogs too. Anyway, and I'll be there, and up pops a notice, and sure enough, Jeena sent me some funny meme, and
Usually a cat meme or a dog meme.
so we do that for a little while at night. Not every night. We laugh, we send laugh. So even for us, we know how useful or how we use the thing. And we're adults able to control ourselves, we are able to put it down. We're able to say no, all of the things. But children with their prefrontal cortex wide open don't have the ability to do that. So that's why we have to be the parent that God has called us to be.
And as parents or the guardians of kids, we are their prefrontal cortex.
Yeah.
That's why we're in their lives, to teach them boundaries and consequences, and to discipline themselves, for what's in their food and in their screen times. We are their prefrontal cortex.
Train up a child in the way they should go. That's what all that this scripture entails. It's like leading your child in the way they should go, giving them the boundaries to train them with the right habits, food, all of it, train your child in the way they should go. And then when they're old, they won't depart from it. That's for sure. Let's go real quickly because our time is running out. In Dr. David Sachs' books, he brings up the problems, but then in part 2, it's solutions, the solutions he provides. And he talks about in chapter 8 what matters and what is the thing that matters the most. And I'm going to read this part. Which one of the following, measured when a child is 11 or 12, is the best predictor of health, wealth, and happiness 20 years later when that child is 31 or 32? Is it emotional stability, grade point average, self-control, openness to new ideas, friendliness? Which one of those, A, B, C, or D, predicts health, wealth, and happiness of an adult?
Okay, it's been a while since I've read that book.
Emotional stability, grade point average, self-control, openness to new ideas, friendliness.
I want to go with emotional stability, but it's also possible that it's self-control.
Self-control.
Self-control, yeah.
The correct answer is self-control. So teaching your children self-control, that means not giving in to their every whim, because that comes from you training them up in the way they should go,
Yes,
and giving them the boundaries for sure that they need.
absolutely. And you can teach your children to obey you the first time you ask them to do something. A yes, ma'am, a no, ma'am, a no, sir, a yes, sir, and a quickly obedient heart. They can do it because they do it for us. And so that is a great measure of self-control to me, is how quickly do they respond to their parents' voice when they call their name. And
And some kids are more stubborn. You have to
yeah, you
work
have to
harder and
work
train.
harder. And not every child, the personalities are different. So different kinds of instruction, different kinds of teaching, different kinds of time spent with them. It's also important. So you can also learn all of those kind of things, the different characteristics that your child has, and then you respond to their specific needs.
And they're a gift. Remember, they are a gift from God to you, and He gave them to you, meaning He will also provide you with the tools you need to train them in the way they should go. He doesn't give you more than you can handle. You might have to fall down on your knees and say, God, help me with this kid. But He will give you the wisdom. And there's a lot of smart people like Jonathan Haidt and Dr. Leonard Sachs who've written books to help you.
Absolutely.
And then there's pastors and people like Jeena and me. I've done it, and now I'm, pouring into the life of my grandchildren, but Jeena is still pouring into the life of children. So it's possible to raise them. But let's quickly, in this solution, I'll just give the headers of these chapters. Humility. That's like chapter 10 is humility, teaching your children to have humility.
And I think that's so valuable, because we have a very self-centered culture around us. Everything is about us. As adults, our social media feeds cater to our likes, the algorithms and all of that. So we have if we're not careful, it's a very me-oriented life. And your children have to learn it is not all about them. In the small picture, it's about your family first, right? It's not the individual child. This is what we do as a family. This is what we do for the family. And then it becomes the church, and then the extended family. It's about what we give back into the world that we've been born into, and teaching them to give at church, to put God first, and those kind of things. All of that, I think, helps with humility.
Then the next one is joy. It talks about how important, life can be so serious, and especially, there is an epidemic of mental illness. That's the subtitle of Jonathan Haidt's book, How the Great Rewiring of Childhood is Causing an Epidemic of Mental Illness. That is the opposite of joy.
Yes. And I think, if I could say just one thing, enjoy your kids.
Yes.
Play, risky play and free play. It's okay to let your kids be bored, because out of boredom comes play, and imagination, and all these things. But we've taken that away with the screen. They no longer have to talk to each other or figure out how to play together or things like that. Where we grew up, at the park with the metal slides and burning ourselves,
those crazy,
the merry-go-rounds. Our kids, this next generation younger, is growing up with screens and only playing video games. And so playing, laughing together. Dad used to play tag with us, chase us or hide and seek.
He would hide and scare the living daylights out of us.
Yeah.
And we're all fine.
Yeah, we're fine. We're fine. Just play together and get out in the yard or go to the park and just play together and laugh. Laugh with your kids. That's the joy.
I remember, if I could, and I'm not trying to toot my horn or anything, but I just want to share, with you, inspire you, hopefully. Ladea, my daughter, has told me, what her memories of me as a single mom were, you just made it fun, Mom. You made it fun. And Robert also has said, I remember, Mom, when you would go outside and throw the ball over the house with me. Like I would be in the backyard or something, and he would be in the front yard, and I would just throw the ball with him over the house. So yeah, just playing and making memories, even when life is hard, it will help them. It will help them become the people that they need to become. Then finally, he says, the meaning of life. And as people of the Word, people of God's people, we know what the meaning of life is. The meaning of life is to live to glorify God, and to bring his goodness to a hurting world. And it starts first in your own family. You bring the truth and goodness of God and his love and his light and his truth to your family first.
Yes.
What do you want to add to that?
Well, I had a conversation with a 6th grader a few weeks ago, and she was really struggling. And she said to me, I don't know what my purpose is. And I said, you are a 6th grader. Your job is to be the best 6th grader that you can be for God.
And you said, this is also an important side note to that story, because she shared this with me. She was really tied up on TikTok.
No, this was another girl.
Another girl.
Yeah, this one didn't have any access to social media. It's just the angst of her emotions. But yeah, I had another conversation with another family, and their 11-year-old was suicidal, had lost all motivation. And I said, that sounds like TikTok's influence to me. And she said her dad discovered she had 4 TikTok accounts. 11 years old, unlimited
4 TikTok
access.
accounts, and now she's suicidal.
Yeah, there's a very blatant effort through social media to destroy our children. And by children, I mean 25 and under. The enemy of our souls, Satan, he is after our kids, and he's making them anxious. It's over 60% of this generation.
An epidemic of mental illness.
Yeah. And they're using TikTok and things like that to diagnose themselves with schizophrenia or Tourette's. They're mimicking the things they see of these social media influencers. So this, when we say Gen Z, that's from about 28, 29 years old all the way down to 13-year-olds. They are so influenced by TikTok and Instagram, girls by Instagram, that they are giving themselves mental illnesses. And it's the greatest indicator of anxiety for this generation, also, the use of social media.
Oh, and I just want to say, please, parents, if you do nothing else important in the world, you want to raise children who grow up into strong, healthy adults. Yes. I remember I used to, cry on the phone with my dad when we were in Ohio and life was hard. And I would tell him, if I don't do anything else but make sure my 2 kids get to heaven, I will feel like I've done something. And that's what I want every parent to feel like. It's so important. You've been given these gifts of their life. They are the only things you've created that are eternal. They're never going to die. They're going to live forever, either with the Lord or in a damned eternity. So you want to pour your life into your children. You want to take these horrible devices away from them, because you don't want to give your child mental illness. You want to give them the strongest foundation for stability.
And joy. I just
joy.
thought of that. Yeah, stability and the joy that comes from having a family, even in a single-parent home. Mm-hmm. The joy of the Lord is our strength.
He is.
And so be encouraged with that. But do make these hard decisions early.
Yes.
And your children need boundaries. They need guidance. It's never over. I had a parent tell me recently again, I thought the preschool years were the hardest, but no, it's the teenage years. They need me now more than ever.
It's the teenage years.
Yeah. They need you now more than ever.
They do.
And they need you to be aware of what they're watching, who they're interacting with, what's happening on social media. Take it away so that you are giving them the best setup for success in a life with God.
Amen. And if you've poured your life and have a fun and good and solid and authoritative relationship with them all through until they hit teenage, then those rough waters of teenage, and they are, but they're still gonna like you. They're still gonna trust you. They're still gonna know they can come to you, as their parent and their person who's protecting them. God bless you, parents and church. We pray God gives you wisdom. We pray that you'll take some of this, pick up these books, read them. Some of these books, even though they're secular books, they're great books for you, they'll be in the bookstore. God bless you. We'll see you next time.